Okay, so get ready, because today we are diving deep into something you might not expect. Um,
Really?
the power of play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it looks like you've been looking into play-based learning lately, and that is awesome.
It's a fascinating area.
Yeah, and it's so much more than just letting kids have fun, right?
Absolutely.
So today we are going to unpack why play is so important, how it shapes us, and maybe even discover some ways we can bring more play into our own lives.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it does.
I think what's really interesting is that play is how children, especially young children, really learn best, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
It's their way of making sense of the world, developing social skills, and figuring out their emotions.
Absolutely. And, something that really stood out to me in all the research was this idea that play actually reduces stress in the classroom.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was wondering, like a neurological level, how does that actually work?
Well, when kids are really engaged in play, their brains actually go into this state of what we call relaxed alertness. So they're focused, they're present, but they're not overwhelmed by those stress hormones like cortisol.
Ah,
And studies have shown that this state actually makes the brain more receptive to learning.
makes sense.
Right. So less anxiety, more engagement. It's like creating this really fertile ground for knowledge to kind of take root.
Yeah, so it's not just about letting kids, blow off steam. It's actually like priming their brains for optimal learning.
Exactly. And the benefits, they really go way beyond that initial learning environment, too.
That's what I was thinking, because the research also brought up some really interesting questions about the cognitive benefits of play.
Right.
And those seem so crucial for long-term development.
Absolutely. So
Right.
think of like a jungle gym for the brain, right?
Okay.
So all these different areas are getting a workout, problem solving, creativity, critical thinking, all these skills are honed through play.
It's giving their brain a full workout.
Exactly. And we're not just talking about like acing a test or anything. These are the skills that help us navigate complex situations, adapt to change, and innovate throughout our lives.
I'm a big believer in seeing things in action.
Of course.
So can you give us some real-world examples of where you see these benefits of play really shining through?
Yeah, so there was this really compelling case study of a preschool that basically went all in on play-based learning.
Wow.
Yeah. And they saw these remarkable outcomes, not just in like general social skills, but in very specific areas like collaborative, problem solving, emotional regulation.
Wow.
Kids were learning to negotiate roles, share ideas, understand different perspectives all through play.
That is amazing.
It was incredible. And academically, they saw big gains, especially in math and science.
Interesting.
What's really fascinating is they actually found ways to tailor the play activities to individual kids' interests.
Oh, wow.
And that really supercharged the learning process for them.
That's so cool. But the research also acknowledged that there are challenges for educators when it comes to play-based learning.
Right.
So how do you balance play with the demands of, structured curriculums and testing and all of that?
It's a real balancing act, for sure. I mean, we live in a culture that often prioritizes, academic achievement and measurable outcomes.
Hmm.
And so there's this perception sometimes that play is frivolous, or a distraction from real learning.
Yeah.
We really need to advocate for the vital role of play and shift those perceptions.
It's about changing the way we think about it.
Exactly. It's not about choosing one over the other. It's about finding ways to integrate play into the learning process.
Yeah. You can't talk about learning these days without talking about technology.
Of course.
So is technology a distraction from play, or can it actually be a tool for play-based learning?
It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think used thoughtfully, technology can be incredibly powerful. Like think about interactive simulations, educational games, those virtual worlds that allow kids to explore and experiment in ways that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is balance, like with anything, right?
For sure.
We need to be really mindful of screen time and make sure that technology is enhancing play, not replacing it.
Right.
The goal is to use technology to spark curiosity, foster collaboration and really deepen engagement, not just create passive consumers of digital content.
Okay, so you've convinced me that play is essential for kids.
Good.
But what about me?
Hmm.
I am well past the building block stage of life.
I hear you, but think about it this way.
Okay.
Remember that feeling of being totally absorbed in something you love,
Right.
where time just melts away and you're completely in the zone.
Yeah.
That's the essence of play, and that's something we can tap into at any age.
I like that. Right.
Right. So think back to a time when you were deeply engaged in an activity that felt like play.
Okay.
What made it so captivating? How did it shape you? That's the power of play, you know? It sparks joy, ignites curiosity, and opens us up to new ways of thinking and being. And that's something worth rediscovering no matter where you are in life.
I love that. I think that's a great place to leave it today.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into play.
My pleasure.
And for everyone listening, keep playing and keep learning.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.